Hello, I am Nathaniel Peters, and this is my presentation on Mesa Verde National Park. The national park, known as Mesa Verde, is a bit of a misnomer. Mesa Verde isn't a mesa at all, and instead, it's a cuesta. This is because it is actually a gently sloping ridge with a steep cliff on one edge. Throughout the Mesa Verde National Park, you can view many of the rock formations that make up the geology of the park. Starting with the most recent, the Cliff House Sandstone was formed about 75 million years ago by the last advance of the Western Interior Seaway. According to the National Park Service, approximately 1,500 additional feet of shale and sandstone had deposited above this layer, but has since been eroded. The Cliff House Sandstone was named so because this is the layer where alcoves had formed and the ancestral Pueblo people built their homes. Below this layer was the Menifee Formation that formed 78 million years ago. The layer appears black or brown in color due to coal seams and fine shale particles. This area formed due to a flat coastal plain that sat over this region. Many plant fossils can be found in this layer due to the decaying plants in the swamps that formed. The Point Lookout Formation is mostly composed of tan to buff colored sandstone and makes up the top of Point Lookout, which is one of the best places to see this layer. This was formed during the advance of the Western Seaway approximately 81 million years ago. As the sea advanced further west, the sea became deeper, and the Mancos shale layer was formed 86 million years ago. This layer is made up of fine particles and organic matter from the seabed. It tends to be gray in color and contains fossils of clams, oysters, and shark teeth. You can see this layer in the hills around the Montezuma Valley. The oldest layer in Mesa Verde is the Dakota Sandstone, which is a densely compacted layer that forms the erosion-resistant basin that makes up the Montezuma Valley. Mesa Verde is perhaps the most famous for its structures built by the ancestral Pueblo people in the alcoves of Mesa Verde. All of the alcoves naturally formed in the sandstone of the cliff house layer at Mesa Verde. Many of the alcoves contained natural water springs that seep through the rocks, which is an important part of why the alcoves were chosen. The people who lived in Mesa Verde began building pueblos within the alcoves around the 1200s after having lived in the area for 6 centuries. The brick used in the construction of the pueblos were cut from the sandstone of Mesa Verde. Mortar was made from a mix of ash, soil, and water. Some of the structures are small and contain a single room, but the largest, such as Cliff Palace, contains up to 150 rooms. Balcony House is especially interesting because it is even higher up within the cliffs. To access it today, visitors must climb a 32-foot ladder and then crawl through a 15-foot tunnel that was used as the original entrance by the ancestral Pueblo people. Most of the sites were stabilized beginning in the early 1900s and look very different today versus when they were rediscovered by Europeans. Mesa Verde may have been chosen by the ancestral Pueblo people because it was a great area for farming. This allowed the ancestral Pueblo people to settle in the region hundreds of years before they built the pueblos. The mesa tilts slightly to the south, which would have increased sun exposure throughout the year. The soil around the mesa was also highly fertile and made growing corn, beans, and gourds more accessible. Mesa Verde today is hot and dry in the summers, so the Pueblo people eventually dug reservoirs to hold rain runoff to use in farming. The alcoves would have also provided shelter from the hot sun. The steep cliffs of Mesa Verde would have provided protection from the elements, people, and animals. Some of the original hand and toe holds can be seen in the sandstone around Mesa Verde, showing how difficult it would have been to get in and out of many of these locations. One of the most interesting things I learned about the Mesa Verde people was that they most likely left the area and did not disappear or die off entirely. Some of the cultures that live around the region still tell stories today that would indicate that the ancestral Pueblo people migrated away. This idea is also supported by archaeological findings in the Mesa Verde dwellings. I was also glad to learn that their descendants still lived in parts of the United States, such as the Ute people of the Great Basin. This is further evidence of the success and continued legacy of the ancestral Pueblo people. The last and possibly most interesting thing is that the ancestral Pueblo people had traded with other cultures as far away as Mexico. Copper bells and seashell jewelry were found in the dwellings inside Mesa Verde. A lot of U.S. history focuses on ancient Europe, Africa, Asia, and South America. It always seems that less is taught about North America and that there were very few highly civilized cultures with complex systems in place. Just the sheer existence of their society in Mesa Verde, their understanding of agriculture, beautiful pottery, and trading proves otherwise. In my mind, this puts the ancestral Pueblo people in a similar status to the Aztecs of Mexico or the Inca of South America. Thank you for viewing my presentation today on the Mesa Verde National Park.